So how did we come up with the different project ideas, and how do we move forward? Well, in every instance, we first started because we were interested in the future of the city by thinking about what partners, what allies we had who were also concerned with the city's future, and thinking about that in very strategic ways. So, for instance, community development organizations are concerned with the future of communities and thereby the future of the city. Schools are educating the future of the city, so they're engaged with forming the future, and the way that they do that matters a lot to the future of the city. We believe that religious congregations were worth engaging because they're future-oriented. In the case of the churches, for instance, thinking about the coming kingdom of God, but also thinking about how you move forward in hope. And so we thought they were potential allies. And in each case, when we would gather people into a process, we would begin with some question which seemed important. In the case of the Urban Imagination Network, for instance, the question around which we gathered was the question that had been put by the Chicago Annenberg Challenge about, were there ways to reduce size, time, and isolation in schools in a way that could really make a difference. And because we gathered school principals and museum educators, because my collaborator Barbara Radner had believed that they had everything to gain from being together, we brought them into a preliminary meeting and just said, let's talk about what it is that you have in front of you to accomplish this year that is absolutely essential. I'm sure you have many things, but pick the one that's really, front and center. And so, for instance, in the Urban Imagination Network, the school said we've got to improve reading in the content areas because literacy is in a crisis. Museum educators said we have to shift from being curatorial institutions to being outreach institutions, because otherwise museums are going to become dinosaurs and nobody's going to show up because there's a changing technology. So how can we do outreach much more effectively so people are interested in coming here? And as we went around and listened to each of those, I was listening for, but I was also encouraging other people to listen for the cross currents which suggested that being together might be a valuable thing to be. And we had also in the center that challenge from the Chicago Annenberg Challenge of reducing size, time, and isolation, and thereby improving the quality of schools. At the end of that initial process, I then asked a simple question, which is, did you hear anything in the course of this conversation that suggests that there's something we could do together that would be to the benefit of the people who are all here? And then listened to those very concrete ideas about the bridges. Having listened to some of those ideas about what such a network might look like, if indeed it needed to exist, then I again went around the table to each person that was present and just said, I'm curious, as you listen to this new thing which is now in the center of the table, how do you see yourself connected to it? Why would you want to be part of it? What would you have to bring to it? So that rather than ever being in a position when we were trying to move from idea to any kind of action or implementation, we were always curious about what might be worth doing, and then secondly, about how people felt about doing it together. And it was only at the point that you could tell that being together generated an enormous amount of enthusiasm and that people wanted to write themselves into a script. There was no master script. The people wanted to create a script and then draw their own bridges into the center. Then we could tell that there was something worth pursuing. And then it became a much simpler matter of just figuring out, sort of what we were going to do and how we were going to do it and when we were going to do it and how much it was going to cost. But I think always the initial challenge is getting people onto a same page where they see that being together is important and worthwhile to them.